Welcome to a new episode of the Bites of Wisdom podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jeremy. In today's episode, John and I delve into the advantages of paying for digital services and the simplicity they offer. The discussion touches points from the all-powerful Google for search, email clients and services, and where does open source fit in with it all. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as we did making it. But we always love your feedback, so keep sending it via email, LinkedIn, smoke signals, or wherever else you can. We love it and send it along. And now, off to the episode. Hey, John. How's it going?
It's going all right.
We're gonna
Finally landed.
Well, I'm a little sick, as you know, so I'm going to probably cough at random and try to reach for the mute button as fast as I can so I don't fuck up the recording.
If it starts snoring, it's,
So, it's just me and you today. We're missing Oz. He's doing some fun work stuff, but we're still going to go on, and we're going to record about paying for services. And I think it's going to be an interesting topic because there's so many things in the technology space that you can pay for or you get for free. You can get your Facebook account for free, or you can now, if you're in the Europe, you can pay for it and not get ads. And then maybe that's going to change. But I just wanted to kind of explore some of these spaces and talk about them with you. Particularly the first one for me is I ditched Google. I'm paying for a search engine now. And with that, I'm looking at Kaji Search, which you have to pay for each month. I pay for $20 a month for it. And it's all because I hate Pinterest. Fucking hate Pinterest. I hate Pinterest. And wait, did I tell you?
That you hate Pinterest.
I tried using search engines, and every single time I find something, I search for something weird or exotic or odd in Google or DuckDuckGo. Pinterest entries were flooding my fucking responses. Everything I would search for, I'd be like, oh, I saw this cool little keyboard. Pinterest. And then I could never find it anywhere else. I couldn't find what I was searching for. So I found Kaji on the Hacker News. But more importantly, the most important feature, it says, ignore everything from Pinterest. And I was a convert. I gave them money that day.
So, listen, I didn't even know this was a thing until you brought it up as we were preparing. And I did the trial. I spent a little bit of time. You know me, the problem wasn't, it actually interests me. So I used it, I saw how it worked. It looked really cool. The problem for me was that little bit of a hurdle to actually have to get it to set as the default search engine in iOS.
Yes.
That was enough for me to be like, and you lost me. But when I did use it, and I used it, from just, on my laptop, it looked pretty awesome. And I do have to say, I didn't realize the amount of just, and I'm not even going to say it's Pinterest, because honestly, I just never seem to notice it as Pinterest, but I do now.
But don't worry, it's the more things I point out, you're going to notice them in your Google search. You're like, why is that there?
It's true. But I trained myself to not look at it, right? Because I hate Pinterest. I don't have the app on my phone. And I have a Pinterest, and the only reason I have Pinterest is because at one point in the last 12 years, I saved all of my Thanksgiving recipes on Pinterest, and that's the only thing in my Pinterest account. If you go and look, it's only my Thanksgiving recipes. I use them every year, and I only log in once a year to get my Thanksgiving recipes. But I've trained myself when I do Google searching, and I don't see it. Like it just, like, it's almost like it's a blank spot that my brain has just filtered out. But when I started using Kagi, it provided a lot more context to searching. It was more than just the standard Google, title and description, and then a few other attributes, with a whole long list of things. I like that part about it.
I really like what got me started was the being able to remove Pinterest by default from my search.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just completely gone. But then the other features started really growing on me. Like Bang. So I can do Bang, which is exclamation G,
Yep.
and then it will be only Google results. Or Bang HN, it will give me Hacker News results. I really like that. You saw that in DuckDuckGo, it works. But the part I really liked is I can add my own. I can go into their JSON and I can create a new Bango, submit it to the company. And since I'm a paying customer, they actually take those feedback and they actually incorporate it.
See, that's awesome. And I for a long time I've been asking myself, not a long time, probably last year, since money has interest gone up and money's no longer cheap for startups, I started asking myself, what are we going to do in a world of um, where you don't have you have this premium model that people are giving away for free because it was funded by a never ending cash of venture capitalists. Eventually they would go public and that's when everyone gets paid. Well, that ain't happening anymore.
Nope.
This is interesting. And the most interesting part about this is what I just heard is that if they're going to scale it, I'm going to pay them to scale it and I'm going to pay them to expedite me submitting a pull request or some functionality. That's awesome. Like for me, that's awesome.
Well, and there's these other features. So like the other is what they call the lenses or the focus lenses, where you hit there and I have three focuses that I focus on: security, technology, and then politics. And when I put those focuses in, it literally is like searching in those domain specific areas instantly. It removes all the it doesn't mean that I get Hacker News results when I'm doing cybersecurity, but they're mostly security results. And it means that I don't have to add all that Google fool logic to be there. I go in, I hit the focus mode, and now I know what I'm doing. And it works. It's not perfect. Sometimes I have to exit it, but I'd say 9 out of 10 times when I'm searching for something in the focus mode, it works exactly as I expected. And then it still removes Pinterest entries, a bunch of other things.
Right, right.
And
Of course, you have the global filter. So just to kind of get back, to the original thesis here is like, why use a premium search functionality? And the way I see it, the kind of when you stated it, you're not really paying for search. You're paying for the flexibility to omni search. You're paying for fucking like the web 2.0 version of Dogpile.
I'm paying for search I'm the customer.
Right.
Instead of being the part of the product. Yeah, we've all heard this 1,000 times. I know. But the part that Kaji's doing is they take feedback. They want to improve the product. So there's constantly little updates in why, like we can go back why it sucks on iOS. Well, because they can't give any of those features on iOS to make it work in the integrated browser without a plugin. Because iOS just doesn't make that drop down seam.
That's not because of Apple's stranglehold over the wall.
I knew that was I knew this was coming.
I couldn't help myself.
We have a whole podcast somewhere about that.
But no, you're right. And the thing for me about search, on another suggestion from you a while ago, I started using DuckDuckGo, and I love that. But
it's not good enough.
It's not good enough. I had to go back to Google.
Yep.
I didn't go back to Google for everything, but I found myself, my phone was DuckDuckGo, my work computer was Google because my brain was either trained to know how to query Google over the last 30 years or almost 30 years, or it just works. So yeah, I mean, Kagi is interesting because now I can start to understand the medium that I am querying. So in the case of Bing, in the case of Google, in the case of Hacker News, leverage what I know already works, but do it in a way where I can be more productive because of the additional functionality they add on top of the lenses and these other things.
And they do the things that Google that really I like they had the AI answers. They do the same thing, but they hook it up to Wolfram Alpha. So I'm not getting an answer from their AI engine. It's from Wolfram Alpha. They made a partnership with Wolfram. Okay, I love Wolfram Alpha. It gives me great answers when I do 2 + 2. Sure, Google does that too. But I can put in real things, cut and paste real equations and put them in there, and I get real answers. But much like you were talking about, I used to love DuckDuckGo because it was privacy focused. I think like that. That's great. But I constantly hit Bang G and had it exit me to Google because it wasn't good enough. Because it didn't allow me to find the results I was looking for, or it felt like I had to go to use the Google foo before tags, domain tags, features that Google had in order to get what I need. I'm not having that problem with Kaji. I'm getting to the point where if I don't use it by default, if I'm on my wife's computer, the first thing I do is like, why am I seeing all this crap I don't need? And but we're coming back to the real idea is I pay for it. And by paying for it, I expect it to be better. And I actively will push them. And I've been on their forums. They have a pretty active user base. And they're doing a good job of engaging their customers. Their Discord's always full of people talking about, hey, what about this? What about this feature? They've tried it. You can get on beta versions and try out things very early and give them feedback. Say, this sucks. And they'll be like, yeah, it does. We're rolling that back. They're trying some AI stuff that I think is partially interesting, but it comes with my account, so I'll use it every now and then.
So many different things I'd like to focus on, but the one thing I'd like to pull out of this is you mentioned you're paying a premium fee for something traditionally that has been free because we're actually selling our eyeballs, right? In the Google case, it's AdSense, and honestly, in the DuckDuckGo case, I don't really know, but I'm sure there's some way they're making money off me.
They were
Um,
selling. They're clear. They're selling anonymized data, but it wasn't tracking to the individual, and they are placing ads on the page. But it wasn't a targeted ad. It was a general ad, which is good. I preferred that over the Google model, which is we can go into Google's model, but
but
their business model is you.
but the point I'm gonna make here is, I in somewhere in my brain, applications, things that are daily drivers of my life, it took me much longer in my life than I thought I'd like to admit to decide that I should pay for simplicity.
Yeah.
And I when finally realizing it, the first thing that I realized is that I've been doing it for years. I mean, I pay Netflix, so I don't get, I pay for Hulu with no ads. I
Yep.
do it in YouTube for no ads. So why not search? Why not other?
I never thought of that, but I do that actively. So, like my
Yeah,
kids, I've had a family YouTube account, not because I watch that much YouTube, but because I don't want my kids don't know what ads are on TV.
my kids don't either. And the thing is I do watch a lot of YouTube, and for me, there's I watch scientific YouTube. I
Mhm.
watch I watch there's some entertainment stuff. I watch a lot of sim racing videos because I'm a nerd. Um, and of course, I watch the Bites of Wisdom podcast. You can subscribe it. But no, the truth is that my kids don't know ads either. And so why wouldn't I do this for search? Why wouldn't I do this for other products? And it's just never occurred to me before until we started talking about some of these premium services and paying for them. Not necessarily paying for the open source or paying for the ability to get a something that was previously free and now getting basically the same service. No, in fact, we pay for entirely different, experience. In your case with Kagi, you pay for the ability to have something you can extend.
But it's something I really like. You know how you're talking about a bit that like you tune that stuff out.
Yeah,
Um, use Kagi for a while and then go try to tune it back out. And you're like, that was a mental burden I didn't know I
yeah.
had to do. So like I'm on somebody else's computer, I'm like, where the fuck are the results in Google? And you're
Mhm.
doing it automatically. I'm no longer doing that already. I'm already going, why is all this malarkey here? I need results.
So I'm gonna try this because I actually see the value in this, knowing that my life is just so much. Again, paying for the simplicity. But why don't we talk about, like, for you, what is your, and it's not on our outline, but what's your barrier for deciding when to pay for something? Like I would have never even thought to pay for something like this.
It's much like, remember we were talking about in my reading and how I became
Readwise,
very
yeah.
focused on what I consume. And as I've become more focused on how I consume information, I remove, much like in YouTube or all advertisements from a lot of sources. Like I read everything via Readwise. I see no banner ads anywhere because everything I come across that's long form, I put into Readwise and I move on and I read it later. And so everything in my online world is GitHub,
Right.
technical pace and searches. And those searches were the dominant form where I saw advertising. And I'm like, why am I looking at this? I don't see it anywhere else. And that's what kicked it in. That's where I was like, huh. And then I saw the advertisement or whatever, the talking or whatever the point was in Hacker News, and people were like, yeah, it's actually it's good enough, better than DuckDuckGo, and it has features you like. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. Yeah, like I said, once Pinterest was gone, I paid for it within 3 minutes just because there was none of that mental burden. But I'm removing more and more from my life that I don't want. Instead of having the mental fear of like, oh, I don't have to deal with that, I just remove it. I find I'm willing to pay money for not having that in my life. And I do that with a lot of things now.
What I know that, I realize that, and I'm starting to think through those things as well. And the last 6 months or so, I've done a month on a lot of different services to try them out to see if it's something that would work for me, for my family, even depending on, do I need to, my wife and I need to organize better between us. Like right now, there's the janky integration that is iCloud. It kind of works, but it doesn't really work when you also have an Outlook appointment calendar and you need to manage them both together.
If you can solve the janky world of calendaring between family, work, and all those, $1 billion project. Billion dollar
Not only
bill.
not only $1 billion project, honestly, like I get why Apple hasn't gone after it, but for me, they're the only ones that could even make an attempt at this point.
It's just so hard. But it would be awesome to be able to, I don't know, schedule a calendar with people without using crappy things like Calendarly in a tip and like, oh,
It's
like,
so junky. I could spend an hour arguing about calendaring software because honestly, unfortunately, I'm at that point in my career where that is like the most one of the most cherished productivity tools that I have is a calendar, and it's unfortunate and it's bad, and I hate it, but it's the truth. But getting back to it,
there's going to be an episode about this because
there's
I
gonna
think we can solve this from a technology
I,
standpoint, but
I
we're
think it would
unwilling
be
to change anything.
we're unwilling to change, but that's not what I want to talk about today. Google search in particular, search in particular. I haven't gone and used Kagi, but because of the shortcuts, because of the ability to just switch between the different public search providers, how often are you using Kagi more for the additional functionality on top of those searches, the search, or are you actually in the background really using Google, but then adding a whole bunch of additional clarity to kind of things that you're or filters on top of things you're searching?
Um, my use case is very much when I hit those focus modes, I use their features. But I use it just like Google. I used to use Google. And I just blindly trust it like I used to Google. I just put in search terms and it goes. But the key thing that I think is I don't worry about the order of what's being returned to me. I don't have that mental barrier. Is there an SEO spam? I'm sure there eventually will be in there if it gets popular, but there isn't by and large right now. People aren't targeting their whatever algorithm how they sort and stuff for things. They have a really stupidly simple feature that I think is awesome, where they create at the bottom of your first result all the top 10 lists that match the results, and they don't put it in a bunch of descriptive like they go like, here's the BuzzFeed, here's the blah blah blah, here's the the top 10 list. So I'll be searching for a restaurant, and it'll go like, here's the top 10 restaurants that would have matched what your search results would have been, so that I can get a little more context
Right.
to some of those. Because sometimes you want to look for the top 10 lists for what food is in the neighborhood. Unbelievably useful little things they add into the bottom or the top or the side of the page that I find that I use way more often than I ever would have thought. And it's just natural and organic. I come up and I go, oh, perfect. That worked. Click.
Yeah. And the thing is, that's almost playing to, well, especially to someone like me, where my self-diagnosed ADD kicks in, and I'll go from searching one thing to being down three or four different rabbit holes. But if having the ability to focus my efforts into kind of the areas that I know I'm going to need,
Yep.
I could see myself being totally productive a lot more, especially using it as like a normal workflow management as to my day-to-day work, right? Versus Google, where again, train myself to just drop right in. I know how to query it. I have an expected set of results based on my knowledge of how to query it, and it just works.
How many times do you add, when you're looking for something a little odd, Reddit to the end of your search to find the
Oh,
conversation?
every single day.
Right. And like I do the same kind of thing, except for there's a toggle, and for
Yeah.
programming, it doesn't hit all Reddit, only hit the program subreddits.
See, again, it's
That's the nuance that I like.
that's the nuance that is awesome. And again, we could go down a rabbit hole of like linked data and how it would be amazing if it actually worked like that. But I there's one thing for me that I would pay for if I got it perfect, and calendar is one of them.
I pay for calendaring
Email.
and it's still not perfect.
Email. And for me, that's it's productivity email. You know how bad the black hole that is my Gmail account is.
I'm going to get in trouble for a second because, well, my wife will listen to this. My wife has finally agreed to let me help her out with her 20-year-old Gmail account.
That's what I got. I got a Gmail, the OG
Yeah.
Gmail account.
Well, so I've had Jeremy at jeremyrossi.com for 17 years. That is the most meticulously managed Gmail account in all of history because I am an absolute unholy tyrant with what's allowed to email my inbox.
Hmm.
It's brutal, but it took me years to get it back from the dumpster fire that it was 7 years ago, and it's now to the point where if it hits my inbox, it's a human, and I'm paying attention.
So I went the other route. Just like you, for things like you had things like Reddit at the end of your search queries. That's how I use Gmail.
Oh god. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. It's just different.
So, we've talked a few times about how organized I am on my computer. I mean, I use the Gmail search box like Spotlight on a Mac. And yeah, I have zero rules. I have zero filters. There's like the only folders I have are the focus areas that I originally got when Google had this really,
Yeah.
short-lived product called Inbox.
Yep.
Otherwise, my Gmail, and the crazy part about my Gmail is it's well, again, one of the original Gmails. I had to pay for Gmail. And this is a perfect example of paying to not have to do something I don't want to do. I paid Google money so
For
that
big
my
storage.
Gmail wouldn't get shut off because I refused to go and actually the problem.
I think that brings us to our next section, paying for email. I want to give you an idea how controlling I have gotten to inbound email. All email that aren't whitelist because I've classified you personally as a human calls into a webhook that hits tail scale. That tail scale will then verify that webhook came from missive, and then it will download the email and begin parsing it to determine if it's something Jeremy will want to see. Now, I haven't hooked up
So
Llama
you
to it
built
yet.
a personal assistant, basically.
I haven't hooked up Llama to it. But I do have it to the point where it will process data from automatic feeds and find out like notifications about banks. It will sit there and put those higher up, like bank notification. It looks for words that are overdraft, unexpected. All the words, the negative
Right.
toned words. And if it does, it puts those in my inbox and puts it at high priority. But that doesn't happen by default.
How much time have you spent, curating these rules?
Um,
Like,
I
do you have a standard set of
probably
things that
I probably spent now I spend probably an hour a month managing my contact list because
Hmm.
that's where most of the control point actually is how I manage my contacts because my contacts determine all the downstream implementation details of inbound email. But the rules, I don't modify much anymore, but I'd say getting it to this state, probably 40 hours total.
So For me, I'm a heavy user of Outlook at work, and I like Apple's mail solution. It's pretty simple for me.
Mhm.
It works for most things that I need it for. My problem is the fire hose of my Gmail account. Um, so I've again paid Apple for the pleasure of having a separate email account that I've used as like a buffer. So I'll forward some things from my one account to the to my I'm paying for like
Oh, gosh.
I'm paying for a buffer because I am that crazy, and I don't want to do work. But I've used Missive,
Mhm.
and again, I recognize the value behind a tool like that, and then that is something I think if I sat down and spent a little bit of the amount of time that you did, I would probably get behind that and start using it. I think it has a lot of in a family situation as well. It could be extremely useful for things that I hadn't even thought about before. The ability with bills and
Yep.
just a whole bunch of and sharing basically a shared mailbox that you would have in Outlook, but doing it with modern tools and in a web, in a web 2.0 style application. But, you know, one of the things that the world's used to Outlook and the world's used to Gmail. That's
Yes.
like I think those two things. And honestly, before Gmail, the world knew Outlook, and for even for a long time, it was still Outlook. And Gmail is again, there are other alternatives. There's Fastmail, there's Proton Mail, there's um, probably three or four others we could think of. But people know what they like. They've trained themselves. They're used to using it. You got to have something to bring them over to a different product. There has to be a reason. For you, the reason for Kagi is clear, right? It's something that
Yes.
absolutely gives you
I also pay for an email client. I pay for Missive. I pay a monthly fee that went up to $40 a month for.
wow.
Because I got every bang feature whistle in the entire world. And it's worth money worth spent because I am paying money for not having and to have a system I
Yeah,
like that acts as, for lack of a better term, a bouncer between the world and me. And I trust that if it's in my box, I'm going to deal with it. And that I have a system for dealing with that where emails actually like people ask me, how do you fucking deal with email? I go, email is the greatest communication tool I have.
I love email. By the way, I agree with that
Yeah.
statement.
But because of it's not a dumpster fire for me and nothing comes into it besides humans, it's fucking awesome. It means that if it dings, it's important. If it means that
Yes.
if it really is important, then bam, I
But you
respond.
need to, but the signal to noise ratio, you
Yeah,
need to just whack everything. 99.9998% of emails
correct.
need to go out the door.
And the part that I find interesting is I'm paying for time in the future by
Right.
investing time right now. But I don't think that's actually what I'm valuing. That's the easy kind of like economist, like, hey, I'm paying for something. No, I'm paying for peace of mind and predictability. I'm paying for the fact that there's a mental burden when I go through my inbox and it's just like, what the fuck is all this? I go through my inbox and I have three actions: snooze, respond, delete. And when I delete something too many times, that sender gets pulled into a different category automatically. And so what happens there is I have those actions.
Yeah.
And that means that the system just improves. It means that if I did, let's say John emails me too many times, the same thing over and over, and I delete, 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 delete. You're not going to be able to make an alarm happen in my inbox anymore because
Right.
I just delete. I don't respond. That's something I find valuable. It's a system I know will happen behind it. And it's like, oh, Jeremy knows what this means. And it's predictable. And I don't have to think about it. And I think that's unbelievable valuable.
And honestly, you know, I'm the same way with text messages. I don't delete.
Mhm.
I mean, actually, do I let Apple prune them, but
I don't do that.
having
I should. I w my
you
text
keep
me
all your messages.
I have every single text message.
Oh, see, now I'm a little scared, but
You should be. We'll talk about the way I tried to chain an LLM to respond to our crazy group at some point in time, but that's a whole different ballgame.
I'm sure that's an excellent project, and there's a lot of things we could do there. But yeah, so for the most part, I let Apple 30 days and whack the whole chain, and it doesn't really affect me too much. Like there aren't too many things. Just and I think it's because of the nature of the text messages form. Like it's in the moment. There's not really a lot of context, and generally, if there needs to be context, it's drawn from somewhere else, group chat, an email, or something like. But for email, I need that the ability to search. I need the ability to do all the things we've talked about. Have you used Proton Mail, Fast Mail? I'm assuming you.
Tried them all. So I tried them all. My favorite one, if I was gonna go pay for a service that didn't like if I didn't have Missive on top of Gmail, which I pay for Gmail too now, because I pay for the workspace account because if you're gonna use a service, I prefer paying for it just because I know what I'm getting. Um, Not that they actually support you, but that's a whole different issue. Um, Hey from 37 Signals has an awesome product if you want to do it their way. I try it out. I wish it just supported multiple domains. I'd probably use it because it almost matches my system by default. Um, but as with all things 37 Signals, they're not done. They're not going to add all the features I want. They're not going to make it a true power users environment. They're going to make it really good for most people. But it's a service that really has a great one. Fastmail was what I used and paid for, and I still pay for as my backup to Gmail. And if I paid for them for 12 years now, because I trust there's IMAP storage. I back everything up from Gmail to them by an IMAP copy script so that I always have an online IMAP version that I can back up because I don't know about you, but my history with getting Gmail when something goes away forever has not been the greatest. Google has a tendency to lock people out of their accounts and you can never get back in.
Yeah, never had that problem. I treat my email as warm storage.
So do I. I don't delete things. I just process things.
Oh, I
I
don't
have
process
everything.
anything.
Yeah, that's a whole different. So, like, I like
S-
Fastmail. It has the best rule system I've ever seen. It's just impossible to write Civ
e-
formatted tools.
Yeah,
I
I used
It's
Fastmail
awful.
for a while. I loved Fastmail, and then I looked at Proton Mail. It was all right. It wasn't for me. And then I landed just for simplicity and the fact that it worked with everything Apple's iCloud custom domain with with Apple's email ecosystem. It just works for me. Um,
But,
but good.
but I was just say, but why do most people not pay for email?
I almost think it's like they don't know they can. It's not a it's not an easy again, it's not something people probably see the value in paying for, and maybe people don't leverage email as much as you and I do. I have a hard time believing that in 2024, but I do know there are people who still are like, "Oh, that's in my Gmail account. Wait, what's that password?" I don't log into it that often. And I do log into mine often. I look at mine often. A lot of people don't do that. So maybe that's why they don't pay for it is that's just not part of their workflow. Maybe we're in a minority.
I don't think we're in a minority, but I do think that the next generation is chat based
Mhm.
versus community like thread email
Yes.
based. And it drives me nuts, but that's you. You've seen my inability to follow a text thread with more than three people beyond anything that goes beyond the screen. That's a personal issue. Um, but I do think people don't understand and are willing to pay for something that they've had for free for so long and they don't understand why they should pay for it. And I don't know how to convince them the value in making your tools useful to you instead of just consuming what's made available.
You know, I it's hard because I'm that person. I haven't tried it and I need to see that value. And honestly, I'm going to go try that. I'm going to do it because after talking and realizing just how much of my problems that happen or things that I use to work around the fact that I'm not paying for a service that is, there's no argument about it. It's better than what I currently have. Yeah, it's worth that $5, $20, whatever the cost is per month, agging an aggregate, depending on what we're talking about. But some people, yeah, they're maybe they don't want to put that money out because that's a lot of money per month over a year, and uh, they don't know what they're gonna get because for them, in their head, it's like, oh, why am I gonna pay for something where I got email for free and what am I getting for it? I don't know.
And that's something I think that's more unique to me. And maybe it's this whole idea that I'm trying to control more of what I deal with in my life. So I don't want bad tools. So I think this also extends beyond that. Like, if you were to look at my desk 15 years ago, and then look at my desk environment and where I work now, and you'd be like, holy bejesus, these are different people. And I think I'm a different person now. I used to be just a consumer of everything, and now I'm starting to focus and push things to be something that I want to deal with. And I think that's an interesting aspect of it is it's something I want to control my environment. I want to be using tools that I find useful for me, not just to accomplish a goal. And I'm sitting here thinking like, hey, do I want to use a really fancy knife or do I just want to use a butter knife? Sure, if I'm just putting bread on, but if I'm going to go cook a good steak, I want a good knife. Not because I think a good knife is better, but because I like quality things. And I can guarantee you that my high-end knife that I have cuts steak no better than another steak, but I like it.
Uh, I as someone who cooks, I understand that analogy. And I agree with it. Totally understand it. But I think for a lot of people, the YouTube or some other analogy works better. It's
Better.
like, hey, you pay for YouTube and you pay for Hulu, or you pay for Hulu, or you pay for Paramount, or all these other services. Maybe you don't pay for all of them, but someone generally pays for at least one of them. And there's a reason you do. And that's the same reason you should think about paying for email,
Yeah.
because it's going to it's going to save time. And depending on who you are and how often your life is integrated into some digital product, an email or something else, paying for that is your time. And as we all know, that's the only thing that that really is value in the world.
I didn't know that till much later in life, but yes, I agree. But I want to take this into a slightly different conversation because it's something that I'm finding as I'm paying for more things such as search, email clients, I use less open source. And I'm a big fan of open source. I think that open source is a big enabler, and I like Fastmail. I used to love
Mhm.
Fastmail, and I used it because, hey, the engine based on Civ was based on Simu or whatever IMAP engine. And I know that I could always move my rules to an open source. That's gone. That's gone for me in a lot of ways. I have continuously, outside of my work role and infrastructure writing code, removed almost all open source from my life in the process. There is the biggest, most open source thing I do is Chrome as the primary tool, is the
Chrome. I don't
Chrome
even know what that.
browser. Yeah,
Chrome. Oh,
yeah. And so like there's not much open source. And by the way, Chrome being open source is quasi, but you know what I mean.
it is though.
But what do you do? Like the Linux desktop's never happening. It's not. It's really not. I wish people would just like, this isn't the year of the Linux desktop. Open source isn't taking over, but as we're doing more software as a service and you're doing more online things and I'm paying for more software, open source for front end is becoming more and more niche. And I kind of have trouble with that. I wish that there was better open source clients and tools. I wish I could go back to Mutt in my old email days with Mutt.
Do you? I mean,
No,
I like the
no.
nostalgia of using something like Mutt. I like and I'm going to compare this to something else. I love Emacs,
Mm-hmm.
but using VS Code makes me so much more productive. I haven't opened Emacs in 3 years. And before that 3-year period of time, Emacs was opened on all of my computers for over 20 years. So the point is, though, is that maybe my job changed, a whole bunch of other stuff, but I still have VS Code open. It's still there. I'm using it. I'm more productive. And for Mutt, why not links? Why using a web browser, right? Like eventually these things.
I used to be the religious person. Why is it not working in links? I
Yeah,
was
I
a
know.
pedantic pain in the ass, but that's a whole different issue.
Was.
Still am.
but but the truth is that, yeah, I mean, is open source going away? No. But
No, I'm not thinking it's going, but
but your point is valid. That the things that you're using open source as an ancillary component of a larger thing that's probably a quasi or quasi closed open source like Chrome, or a completely closed source application, and like Safari. Those two things are like, Chrome is quasi open source, Safari is closed source, and they both use the same, well, at a certain point, WebKit engine. But maybe that's a bad example. But the
Yeah,
point
it's
is still
tough. I know what
valid.
you're going. I know what
Yeah.
you're going. But I mean, but that's the thing. Is this, I like open source. I want my tools to be open source. I like when I do development, I want, if I'm going into a company and I'm like, great, we're going to build on open source tools first because I think that's important. Not because I think it's important because to not buy things. I think it's important to be able to use and leverage what everybody's bringing to bear to the market. But I don't see that happening in end users. And I
No.
think that what you're seeing is it's not able to serve that need. I mean, I don't think my email client Missive could ever be built in the open source world. It is too focused on delivering a value to email power users, and it requires a bit like a software as a service model in
So
order to
let's
justify it.
so let's caveat this with, could Missive be built as an open source product?
Mhm.
Yes. But could it be built as an open source product and then turned into a business that's actually successful and can employ
No,
people? No. So that's the
that's an
differentiating factor here.
I think that that's a really good way of putting it, is that trying to take an open source product and build money on it usually doesn't work. It's hard. Sometimes you do. We can talk about HashiCorp and others, all the fun things I
That was
need.
right.
But there is something, yeah, I don't think open source really does work well when it's an end user product that way. It doesn't seem to have as much of a drive and a push. But I do
The-
like that way of thinking about it. You can't take something like Emacs and turn it into a pay product. You can't take
you can, but there needs to be a value add on top of it.
right.
And if you look at the successful open source, or whatever you want to call them, SaaS
Yep.
companies that have open source components, there is a value add on most of these. Supabase, however you
Yeah.
want to say it, as
Postgres.
Postgres
Postgres.
as a service, right?
Yeah. But a lot more.
But a lot more. But the interesting thing is that a lot of their stack is open source. You can go run Supabase at home, or you can run it in your own data center. But the parts that you will not get are the parts that do the orchestration, that do the things that are role-based access to share it through an organization, the enterprisey features that really make it work for more than 2 or 3 people.
But how do we get to, and maybe this is the old purist of mine, and I want to be open source, blah, 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 whatever that model was in my young years. But how do we get to the point of having our tools that we depend on for email being open source? Is that something that's just not going to happen because it's just too many
No,
niche people?
because everyone wants to get paid.
Right. I know you're not wrong, but
I mean, there the answer is that that there are open source tools. They're just not the premium quality ones, and you want to pay for that.
yeah,
Just like you don't use a some rinky dink company out of South Korea's phone. You buy an Apple phone.
I don't use Thunderbird as my email client.
Does it work? Absolutely. Could you use Apple Script and do probably half the shit that you want to do? Yeah, probably. But
I put a lot of time in email. I'm not willing to put that much time.
right.
Yeah,
Again,
and I've traded, but I've also traded like in my email flow. I am trusting that Missive won't go out of business because right now, if Missive goes out of business, I am 100% bet that they're at least been stable for the last 10 years, stable enough that they're not going away.
well,
I
The
know I
worst
said
thing-
that I'm fucked now.
yeah, you're fucked. But also, the worst thing to happen is what happens to most of these companies is that someone buys them and shuts them down, which is
Mhm.
exactly what you don't want to happen.
Oh God, then
But-
nothing scares me more after right now because I
Right.
have really
You
invested in
shouldn't
this
have said
platform.
that. I mean, but like, here's the thing: there are components of Missive, there are components of other things that are all open source that could be built, and you could stitch together something if you really needed to. But it's probably more time than you want to spend, personal time. So yeah, you're looking for an easy button, and most people, there is no easy button. It's free. So
I'm definitely not looking for an easy button. I just want my system to work.
okay, maybe easy button's the wrong word. You want something that looks like an easy button, but behind it opens up and there's there,
There's all
you
kinds of
can
nerd knobs and
not
magic
nerd
that
knobs in there.
happens.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I have lots of weird, esoteric things I want my email client to do. So that when I'm my day-to-day running with them, they're very, very simple. It's weird. A lot of complexity to make what I do every day simple.
But again, being a person that if I'm able to look at like YouTube and other services, knowing that my I never watched YouTube for geez, probably the first I don't know how long YouTube's been around. Maybe the first 10 or 15 years YouTube was around. I really only started watching YouTube about pandemic,
Okay.
right? And I realized the content on there, once you get past all the junk, there are some really cool
Oh,
things on there that I want to watch. And I didn't want to watch ads. So I was like, fuck it. Let me pay for the ad thing. And
God.
that's it. So for me, I never had the YouTube before, but with ads too much. I knew it was there, but I paid for it and I would never, I'd never get rid of it at this point. Like Google, you could probably, there's a price I won't pay for it, but it's not like I'm going to not pay for it and still use the service. You would piss me off and I just
Yes.
wouldn't do it anymore.
My kids every now and then will have to work on a computer without YouTube logged in, and literally the YouTube ads will make them angry. And they're like, Dad, why is there ads on YouTube again? Or they'll be all logged in on TV, or a TV will get logged out of our house and they'll be watching YouTube. And they're like, Dad, there's ads all over YouTube. You gotta fix this. I'm like, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. No, we can't do anything until it gets
Our
fixed.
life is over.
You're not understanding. YouTube has a lot of ads if you don't pay for it.
I honestly I have no idea. And the same thing is again, I cable I've been out of cable land now
Yes,
for I don't know
years.
how long, and I'll be at a friend's house or my family, my family's house, and I'll be like, shit, what are these fucking ads for? And I'm realizing, oh shit, they have cable, and people just go to a channel and fucking watch shit. And the crazy thing is that happens still. That's a thing. It was a thing, for everyone here that's under the age of, I don't know, 30. That existed. People just would watch channels and channel surf. That's a lot like YouTube and doom scrolling.
Disney Plus is coming back with a set it and forget it channel. So that Disney Plus, you can put it
Brilliant.
on, and it's just because people are like, I miss a continuous running narrative that had certain hours that met certain maturity levels, so that in the middle of the day it was PG and by night it was R.
That's
And
brilliant because people don't want to have to think about what to watch.
yeah,
And if you have someone that literally you could have maybe a group of 20 people schedule 5 or 10 of these like theme rated types of channels, like, oh, I want this type of animation,
HGTV or
HGTV or superheroes, right?
whatever.
And but literally if you go like all they need to do is go into the Disney Plus app and there's those little tiles, Marvel, Star Wars. And if you did that through a schedule and you made it, 5 days a week, it's like TV land when we were growing up.
They're, I love MASH, but that's a final tangent. But John, you know what time it is.
Yeah.
You get the final word.
I get the final word.
Wasn't going to be me.
It wasn't going to be you. This one's an interesting one. So the way that I see it is paying for simplicity. It's not just with technology. We pay for simplicity throughout, our life. And there are parts of your life where you just don't want to take the time, you don't want to trade your moments that you're not working or you're not spending time with your family, or you're not doing these other things. You don't want to trade those things for tasks that maybe you pay for food one night because you don't want to cook, or maybe you pay for someone to tailor your clothes because you don't know anything like myself about tailoring clothes and those fun things that we all take for granted. We pay Amazon to ship for us, to handle logistics. And of course, with media, some of us have cut cable for years because we don't want to deal with cable companies. We don't want to deal with ads. And we just simply, when we want to watch something, we want to know we can go to that app, watch the show, and then on a predictable schedule, even though it's not a format of just shows playing all the time within schedules, but a predictable weekly schedule, a new show is going to come out and I can tune in and have a watch party or do what I make it part of my daily, weekly life. Why not for other things that will give you more time, that will make you more productive, that will take some of that anxiety you might have because you have a black hole of an email box that has 25 years of Gmail. And the only way you could actually read anything, you need to treat it like a Google search box and start to use some of those really esoteric commands, which, by the way, most of them work in Gmail as well. I know. But in the end, the final word is, we pay for simplicity. We pay for our time. We're trading time on one end at work to get money, and then we're taking that money and we're trading it somewhere else. So maybe we need to sit down and think about, rather than just trading the money for the time, how can we trade services for the time, right? And that's the final word.
Thank you for listening to another episode of our podcast. To support us, please subscribe on LinkedIn, Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. We love feedback. You can reach us at feedback@biteswisdom.com. Until next time, stay curious.